There are moments in history that no one recognizes until they've already passed. No fireworks, no invading army, just the quiet cracking of a once unstoppable empire. Throughout the 20th century, the United States stood as the world's beacon, victorious in world wars, leading in science, technology, culture, and military might. But today, amid domestic unrest, the rise of new global powers, and subtle shifts beneath the political surface, a question is echoing louder than ever. Are we witnessing the fall of the American empire? Or is this simply another chapter before the next great resurgence? One, cracks in the foundation. When an empire begins to fall, it doesn't collapse overnight. It fractures from within quietly, gradually, and often invisibly at first. In the United States, these cracks in the foundation are becoming impossible to ignore. Unprecedented political polarization. This isn't just political disagreement, it's a civil fracture. Today, the two halves of America seem to live into separate realities. Deep partisan division without compromise. The January 6th Capitol riot was not just political unrest, it was a symbolic breakdown of democratic trust. Polls show record low trust in Congress, the Supreme Court, and democratic institutions. When citizens lose faith in the system, the foundations of democracy start to crumble. Deepening economic inequality. Once known as the land of opportunity, America now reveals a shrinking middle class with skyrocketing housing and living costs. The top 1% holds more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. Over 37 million Americans live below the poverty line. Millions work 2 or 3 jobs and still can't make ends meet. When the American dream becomes unreachable for most, resentment breeds unrest. Collapsing infrastructure, a symbol of decline. Empires project power through infrastructure. In the U.S., bridges, roads, subways, and water systems in major cities are crumbling. To Flint, Michigan water crisis with lead-contaminated water stands is a tragic failure of basic governance. Without strong physical foundations, even the most powerful empires fall. Widespread health and social crises. The opioid and fentanyl epidemics claim thousands of lives annually. America leads the world in drug overdose deaths. Mass shootings have become tragically routine, even in schools. Homelessness, mental illness, and a fractured healthcare system show the breakdown of societal safety nets. A population in pain, lost in addiction and untreated trauma, is a hallmark of an empire in decay. Great empires don't fall from foreign swords, they fall from internal decay and disconnection from their own people. The United States, for all its achievements, is now facing classic warning signs of a structure being eroded from within. An empire doesn't collapse from the first blow, it collapses after thousands of small ones that no one kept count of until it can no longer stand. Two, global hegemony in retreat. For nearly a century, the United States has served as the central axis of global order, from Bretton Woods to NATO, from the US dollar to Hollywood. But today, that dominance is facing mounting challenges from every direction. A global empire doesn't have to collapse in war, it can erode through complacency, rising rivals, and strategic missteps. China's silent but relentless rise. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China is investing in over 100 countries, building its own sphere of economic and political influence. Its advancements in naval power, AI, chip production, and green energy are now surpassing the US in key areas. Simultaneously, China is pushing yuan-based trade, directly challenging the dominance of the US dollar. China isn't confronting the US head-on, it's redesigning the global system on its own terms. Russia's return to hard power. The war in Ukraine isn't just about territory, it's a declaration that the US-led world order is weakening. Russia is strengthening ties with China, Iran, India, forming an informal anti-Western bloc. Despite sanctions, Moscow remains economically active and continues to influence Africa and the Middle East. A multipolar world is emerging, one where Washington is no longer the sole center of gravity. America's allies are becoming more independent. Europe is developing its own defense, energy, and tech strategies, increasingly distancing itself from US leadership, especially post-Trump. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Gulf nations are pivoting toward China and Russia. Even traditional allies like Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea are significantly increasing autonomous defense spending. As allies act more independently, America's role as global leader quietly fades. The dollar faces unprecedented threats. BRICS nations are accelerating efforts to de-dollarize their economies. Bilateral trade deals in local currencies are becoming more common. China, Russia, India, Iran. America's use of the dollar as a sanctions weapon has led many countries to seek escape from its financial influence. If the US dollar loses its global reserve status, America won't just lose financial leverage, it will lose a core pillar of its soft power. America was once the host of the world stage, but today, many no longer follow script. The 21st century is no longer simply an extension of the American era. It is a new, unpredictable arena of rising powers and global rebalancing. Power doesn't vanish overnight. It leaks through every trade deal, every vote, every ally's decision to go their own way. Three, the dollar's uncertain future. For over 70 years, the US dollar has been the crown jewel of global finance. It has served as the world's reserve currency, the medium for international trade, and a symbol of American economic dominance. But today, its supremacy is under threat like never before in modern history. From unquestioned power to quiet doubt. After World War II, the US built a financial order around the dollar. Bretton Woods, the IMF, the World Bank, SWIFT. Every country needed dollars to buy oil, gold, and trade globally. This allowed the US to print money the world was forced to accept. But in recent years, confidence in the eternity of the dollar has started to erode. In a multipolar world, the dollar's monopoly is no longer taken for granted. To dollarization, the global shift has begun. China, Russia, Iran, and India are increasingly conducting bilateral trade in local currencies, bypassing the dollar. The BRICS bloc is actively discussing the creation of a new reserve currency. Nations in Africa and South America are diversifying their foreign reserves, moving toward gold, the yuan, and the euro. De-dollarization won't happen overnight, but it has begun and it's spreading. Weaponizing the dollar and the backlash. The US has used the dollar as a weapon through economic sanctions against Russia, Venezuela, Iran, and others. This has made other countries realize dependence on the dollar means Washington can pull the plug at any time. In response, adversaries are developing alternative payment systems, for example, China's CIPS. Weaponizing the dollar has triggered a global financial defense mechanism against the dollar itself. US national debt and eroding trust. US national debt has exceeded $34 trillion, with unchecked spending. Credit ratings face downgrades, interest rates are surging, and the dollar is increasingly seen as a tool of excess, not a symbol of security. If trust in America's ability to manage debt collapses, the dollar will no longer be the world's safe haven. The American empire rests on financial pillars, but its monetary foundation is trembling. What happens if the dollar loses its throne? Domestic inflation will rise. America and no longer print money the world must absorb. US geopolitical leverage will decline sharply as its control over global institutions fades. The dollar may not collapse completely, but it could fall from global ruler to merely one of many options. At this level, losing dominance is already a strategic collapse. The American empire wasn't built on force alone, it was built on a currency the world was required to use. If confidence in the dollar collapses, every other pillar of American power will begin to crack with it. An empire doesn't need to be conquered to fall sometimes, it only needs to stop being trusted. 4. Cultural fragmentation. No empire survives without a shared identity, a common story that binds people across classes, backgrounds, and generations. Whether rooted in religion, ideology, or a collective dream of the future, this shared narrative forms the soul of a nation. And when it crumbles, empires lose their spirit long before they lose their territory. In the United States, that soul is fracturing fast. The information divide, living in separate realities. Social media algorithms have created echo chambers where people only see what reinforces their beliefs, pushing them toward further extremes. A Republican and a Democrat can watch the same event and interpret it as if they're witnessing two completely different realities. With the mainstream media losing trust, truth has become a customizable concept. When a nation can no longer agree on what is real, meaningful dialogue becomes nearly impossible. Identity politics and the rise of internal tribalism. Instead of identifying simply as American, people now define themselves by race, gender, political party, religion, or region. The unity that once followed 9/11 has given way to suspicion and the framing of fellow citizens as internal enemies. A society full of microgroups in constant opposition cannot function as a unified whole. Generational disconnect when parents and children inhabit different worlds. Younger generations are shaped by the internet, TikTok, globalism, and borderless culture. Older generations hold on to more traditional values, family, nationhood, hierarchy, and structure. The result, silent conflict in families, classrooms, and workplaces. When generations can no longer understand each other, a nation's history stops being passed down cleanly. Cultural dissolution, from shared stories to fragmented media. In the past, Hollywood helped shape a unified image of America: brave, free, resilient. Now, pop culture is splintered into thousands of niche identities by ethnicity, gender, class, and subculture. People no longer ask "Who are we?" They ask "Which group do I belong to?" Without a shared cultural narrative, societal collapse becomes a question of when, not if. America was never just a country, it was an idea. And when that idea no longer unites 300 million people, no amount of military, money, or technology can hold the cracks together. You can't build a lasting empire if its people no longer believe they're part of the same story. 5. Can empires fall quietly? When we think of empires collapsing, we imagine epic battles, foreign invasions, burning capitals. But in truth, most great empires in history didn't fall with a bang. They decayed slowly, silently, and internally. Lessons from history: collapse without chaos. The Western Roman Empire didn't collapse in a single day. It took centuries of stagnation, corruption, financial chaos, and loss of civic trust. By the time Romans realized it, they were no longer an empire but a shadow of what they once were. The Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, the Soviet Union all faded gradually, not through one single war, but through strategic retreat and internal erosion. Silent decline is the most common fate of great powers. Empires don't need enemies, they collapse from within. They fall not because they are invaded, but because of complacency, fragmentation, arrogance, and refusal to face reality. The US now faces social unrest, unsustainable debt, political paralysis, cultural division, and shrinking global influence. Yet many still believe we'll be fine. Same illusion that doomed other empires before. The quickest way for an empire to fall is to believe it can't. The signs are already here. When institutions lose public trust, alliances fray, culture fragments, and the middle class erodes, this is not a warning. This is a process already underway. What once made America great, innovation, unity, idealism, has been replaced by suspicion, division, and cynicism. The question is no longer is it happening, but rather, what stage of decline are we in? No bang, just a fading light. If America is falling, it may not be with global war, but through gradual inflation, eroded optimism, decaying infrastructure, and quiet irrelevance. One day, the world may wake up and realize America is no longer the center but simply one part of the world's wider story. No one announces the moment an empire dies, only those awake can sense it. Empires don't have to be conquered to collapse. Sometimes, they simply stop moving forward. And the most dangerous collapse is the one you don't feel until it's already too late. Six, a fork in the road. Every great empire, at the height of internal crisis, reaches a decisive fork in the road. It can neither reform and renew itself, facing hard truths and rebuilding from within. Or it can cling to illusion, delay the inevitable, and allow decline to slowly consume it from the core. The United States is standing at that very crossroads. And the most dangerous truth is this: there is no national consensus on which direction to take. One path leads to accelerated decline. Without major course correction, America could continue down a path marked by extreme political and cultural polarization, paralyzing any unified national action, crumbling trust in institutions, breeding conspiracies, populism, and anti-democratic sentiment, loss of global leadership. As allies drift, the dollar weakens, and the US is overtaken in education, technology, and moral authority. A collapsing middle class, rising social unrest, and normalization of violence as a way of life. This is the road of silent descent, not because of external enemies, but due to blindness and inaction from within. The other path is a great renewal, but there is still hope if America chooses to acknowledge that the current system is in crisis and embrace radical reforms in education, politics, media, and national values. Invest seriously in the next generation, not just with technology, but with ideas, opportunity, and trust. Redefine its role in the world, not through force, but through innovation, diplomacy, and ethical leadership. Revive a shared national story, one that gives every American, regardless of background, a reason to believe in us. This is not fantasy, it's what history's greatest empires did if they had the courage to self-reflect and evolve. The question is no longer will it collapse, but will we turn back in time? No one denies what America has achieved. But greatness in the past doesn't guarantee greatness in the future. Everything now depends on the choices made in this moment by this generation. Every empire must one day face the mirror. The question is, will it dare to truly look? The road ahead is not infinite. Empire is not a permanent gift, it is a generational contract renewed through wisdom and action. And today, that contract is being tested. Will America choose the path of reform and revival? Or will it unknowingly write its final chapter without realizing it's already begun? Final thought. No empire is eternal. No civilization is immune to decline, no matter how powerful it once was. Collapse doesn't always come through invasion, war, or fire. Sometimes it comes through quieter forces, far more dangerous. Complacency, the illusion of exceptionalism, and worst of all, the refusal to see reality. When an empire stops looking outward and refuses to look inward. America doesn't lack resources, it doesn't lack talent, history, or opportunity. But what it does increasingly lack is an honest mirror. Any empire can survive crisis if it dares to reflect, recognize what's broken, and fix it before it's too late. History doesn't repeat itself, but it echoes loudly. From Rome to the Soviet Union, from Imperial Britain to ancient China, all great empires believed they were invincible. All of them had a moment, a chance to course correct, and most failed to choose wisely. Will America be different? Will this generation have the courage to rewrite the path? Or will it remain lulled by the glow of past glory until that light quietly fades? The closing thought. Empires rise through innovation, unity, and vision. They fall through arrogance, division, and denial. This question is no longer just for Americans. It's for every observer in history's audience. Are we witnessing the decline or the reinvention? The collapse or the beginning of something new? Thanks for watching the video. Leave a comment to let me know if the prediction is true.